Hello, everyone. We're really excited to have Kimberly Workman joining us. Kimberly, welcome. Really excited to have you here.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So, a number of our community know about this story, the appraisal challenge, but I know there are a lot of people at this conference who don't know about you. So, would you mind telling us a little bit more about yourself, your job, and where you live?
Sure. So I live in Portland, Oregon with my husband, Jeff Patterson, our two kids, and I am an orthopedic surgeon and I'm in private practice here. And Jeff is a business owner, entrepreneur himself, and has had a martial arts school for almost 30 years. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I work full time and he kind of works what he wants to work and
Awesome.
hang out with our kids.
So, can you tell us how you guys got interested in real estate and how you started your journey?
Well, I would say it wasn't even on my radar until probably last spring, but Jeff has done real estate, sort of dabbled for a long time before he met me. He did house hacking before I think it got dubbed house hacking. When he was in college, he bought a house and rented rooms out to a bunch of his buddies and basically lived, rehabbed it himself and basically lived rent free and then sold that. And about 14 years ago, he bought his own building for his school in downtown Portland. And then that was sort of it for a while. He was busy trying to pay that down, and we had kids, and I was building a practice. And he would always mention to me, like, hey, we should. I have some friends that are real estate agents, and they're building these condo units and renting them out. I'm like, that doesn't sound like a good idea at all. and he reminds me that he was way interested in this a while back, but I was like, no, we can't do that. And then last year I got interested, actually started out with Peter Kim's passive investing course because I was looking for a way to use some money in a self-directed IRA that I had. And just the due diligence process, I think deal analysis really interested me. And then I have my best friend and one of my running partners, she's a now retired ophthalmologist because all she does is real estate, but she is on a kind of a much bigger level, but she's always been talking to me about her real estate endeavors and her adventures. And so it finally kind of sunk in, like, hey, maybe I should look into this. And then COVID hit and my practice shut down. We stopped paying ourselves. Jeff's school, we thought we were diversified between our two jobs, but his school everything shut down, and we're like, oh my goodness, we need another stream of income. So, and I think also it was just looking for something that where when I get ready to retire, I still have other income coming in. And I always felt like, well, I'm always going to be able to make money, but I'm getting to the point, I've been practiced for 15 years now, I'm starting to think about when I'm going to retire and, okay, well, am I going to have the amount of cash coming in that I need coming in to be able to have a comfortable retirement and still take care of, our kids and things like that. So that's kind of what led to it. And then it was all in.
Tell us about that. How did you decide to go all in? Was it both of you or you or?
So Jeff was all in when I told him about rep status and how that could help us out because he hates paying taxes. And so I was all in as I'm the one that's been reading all the books and listening to all the podcasts. And I'm kind of I love the hunt. He's very good at the hands-on stuff. So he leaves the hunt to me, but I've made him read some books. So we are pretty good partners in that category, from that standpoint. And then my friend was the one that really, she's like, this is from a scale standpoint, if you can do this many units versus just this many units, this is, how you can scale better and how much more quickly you can get to your goals. And Jeff paid down his building almost completely, which was very fortunate going into COVID, but so that was a lot of untapped equity. that we had just not, working for us. And she was the one that says, look, you got to use that, you're sitting on some good equity there that's not really making you a lot of money right now. So, but it was a lot more difficult than we thought it was going to be to get like a line of credit or refinance. That took a while, but that's where, most of our capital has come from.
That's a really good point. We call it lazy equity. And a lot of people do have lazy equity, if they're in their primary homes or maybe they own, their practices. And there are a lot of sources of lazy equity. And once you're a real estate investor, like we have a lot of lazy equity in some of our properties that we forced a ton of appreciation, and we haven't done a cash out refi and take that like lazy equity out. But if you want to grow your portfolio, that is really the most efficient way to do it fast.
Yeah.
So you started bigger right away, sounds like. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. Well, it was kind of like go big or go home. And if we've got this equity, might as well use it. But also just looking, okay, how much do we need to acquire this year where we can, shelter a certain amount of income. And so that's been kind of driving part of it. But also, what's our goal and how quickly do we want to get there? And it's a lot easier to get there when you do go bigger from the start. And, I think in a lot of ways, those bigger deals aren't any more difficult than the smaller deals. And then if somebody's vacant, if a unit's vacant, it's not quite as big of a hit as if you have a smaller property and you have something that's vacant, then it's just a much bigger hit. You can't get it rented. Pros and cons of both, though. I think the smaller units tend to appreciate a lot more versus the larger commercial deals, and they're all about your net operating income.
So you went out, and what was your first purchase?
It was 2 fourplexes in Kaiser, Oregon, which is just north of Salem. So it's about a 50-minute drive from us. And originally we weren't really looking so much to acquire something in our local area just because the market's so hot, things are so expensive, and Oregon's not a super, landlord friendly state. And my buddy had pushed us towards Texas, and that's sort of how we got into Texas as well. But this one, I've always just kept an eye. I keep looking at Redfin every day and keep a look at what's coming up in the market around here for multifamily properties, and had seen this one, and it had been on the market since last August, and they had listed it for just a huge amount of money. And it went pending a couple of times and back on the market. And we'd been in contact with a real estate agent here before about a property that he had listed for somebody else, a 10-unit. And he is mostly single family and under 400 units, but he knows a lot about how to look at the numbers for bigger properties. And so I reached out to him to ask him to check into this property for us. And it kind of went from there, got the financials and figured out how far under market the rents were, figured it's been sitting on the market for a while. They finally reduced it a bit, not as much as we would have liked to. But then we decided I ran the numbers, and we made an offer and did a lot of really hard negotiating, got them down a lot, and then had the inspection, and then got asked for an even more of a haircut. And between my husband, he's a hard-nosed negotiator, and our real estate agent, we got even a little bit more off. The last offer was we gave them 2 counters. One was our final and best offer, or sign and we're out. So they had 2 to choose from. It's this or this. And they chose, and I was on the fence, whether I wanted them to take it or leave it, by that point, because we knew how much work it was going to be. But they ended up taking our offer, and that's kind of how it started. But that was a pretty long, drawn out acquisition, just with financing challenges, dealing with banks and the sellers and a few other things.
I think that's also
but that closed in May.
Okay, closed in May. And so that's a really good point.
Yeah.
If something's been on market for a long time, you have that ability to negotiate up front and then to negotiate once you've had that inspection. So you actually have
Right.
two opportunities to negotiate, which sounds like you guys really took advantage of.
Right. I think what was on that one, because it was listed as an 8 unit, we used that to our advantage as far as using the NOI, the net operating income valuation basis for evaluating the property, and their financials were just they were bad. So their financials at their list asking price, was like a 2% cap rate or something. And so we use that as leverage, saying, how are you ever going to expect anybody to get financing on a property like this with the net operating income that you guys are posting over the last couple of years. So that allowed us, because we figured out that it was actually on 2 tax lots. And then after we had actually gotten into contract with them on one deal, we ended up splitting it into 2, and they agreed to do 2 separate purchase agreements for both of them. And at that point is when we went the residential route. But prior to that, I think just it was really helpful that it was marketed as a commercial property for us, because we were able to use that different valuation method.
Yeah, that's a good point that, investors, they generally don't want to overpay, and they're going to buy based on the numbers. Now, these days,
Right,
in the hot
exactly.
market, some people are overpaying, or maybe they're not true investors,
Mhm.
but true investors are going to pay based on the income. So that was a great way to kind of get the price down. I'm curious, can you give us a sense of how much of a haircut you got, given starting with the list price and then kind of where you ended up in terms of the purchase?
Sure. So the list price when they listed it last August for both properties was $1.6 million. And they I think it was January, they reduced it to 1.39. We got it under contract at 1.05. Wow. And final sale price was $975.
Nice job.
That's amazing. What was that process?
So,
how long did it take from start to finish?
Oh man, I don't know. I think we put in our initial offer at end of February, and I think we were going back or sometime February, going back and forth for at least a couple of weeks on getting down to the 1.05, and then the inspection. It might have even almost been like 4 weeks before we got to the final price after inspections and getting bids from a contractor and stuff like that.
So one thing I want to reiterate is that this was listed as an 8-plex, so it was going to be a commercial loan. Mm-hmm. And what you actually realized, it was on 2 tax parcels, so you could treat it as 2 4-plexes, and you could get a residential loan with much better loan terms. And that's really a source of hidden value now for you too, because when you go to sell, you can sell it to 2 separate investors who are looking for 4-plexes. You have options.
Correct. And the 4-plexes are valued based on market comps, sale comps, not based on the income method. So they actually appraised for $515 each. So right there we had immediate, equity. And yeah, I mean, seeing how much 4-plexes are going for around here, it's kind of crazy. I don't know. We got lucky, I think. And
well,
my husband being pretty hard-nosed about price, but
you made your luck. I mean, you were looking for it, you found it yourself, and then you negotiated. So nice job.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, then definitely we have a separate video where we'll look at the property in more depth, and also look at some of the before and after pictures after the renovation. So be sure to check that out.
So let's talk about your second property, because now you ventured into a new market.
Yes. And actually the Texas market was actually the first market. We kind of picked that. Although we did the Zero to Freedom course winter 2020, and I think we had picked the Tri-Cities area of Washington as our market, but just couldn't find anything there. And just sort of happened on this deal in Beaumont, Texas. Houston was just too hot. And we really wanted to pick up, at least, 12 or up units, and just couldn't afford anything anywhere else. And so ended up landing on Beaumont and met an investor owner out there by calling about a property that he was selling. And that property he already had under contract, but he said, call him back in January. So this was in October, November, before Zero to Freedom started. And I was like, okay, I need this course to start because I need to learn how to do this. And so I called him back in January, and he let us know that there was a 22 unit and then a potentially 6 unit property that he was going to be selling like around April or so. And so traveled out there in February and met him. He drove me around Beaumont, showed me around. I had an appointment with one of the bankers at one of the local banks there that he'd said was a good banker, and met the property manager. And the property needed a lot of work. And it turns out that it was almost like kind of a quick flip. They had just purchased it. And then we're trying to kind of fix it up and then turn it around pretty quickly to sell it. Still needed a lot of work. He said he was going to do a lot of work on it. We ended up getting under contract. But the short story of that is when Jeff went out to look in March to see what the updates had been done, really hadn't gotten as much done as he said he was going to do. And Jeff is very particular, and as he's done a lot of his own rehabs, and just knew that things just weren't done to his level of liking. So, and then the inspection turned up a lot of stuff too. It needed new roofs and things. And so we talked to him about, hey, based on just just on the numbers, it's really, and all the stuff that needs to go into it, we're not really comfortable buying it at this price. And he really didn't want to come down. But it was still very amicable. And he really helped me establish some contacts out there. And a couple weeks later, the property manager contacted us and said, hey, I have another owner out here who's looking to sell a 16 unit to 1031 exchange. And he's a good guy. He's really put a lot into the property and really fixed it up, and it's in solid working condition and kind of ready to cash flow. And are you guys interested? Absolutely. And it was actually a property that when I had been out in Beaumont, I had seen. I was like, that's what I want. I want a property that looks like that. And spoke to the seller, figured out what it was he was looking for, and found out what his asking price was. We offered full price, asking price, and it was such an easy deal to get through. He was super. He would just, anything that came up, he would notify us about. When it came to tenants, he kept managing it just like he was going to. He was still owning it. The banker was super easy to work with. And then we ended up, we literally just closed on that yesterday.
Wow.
So
Congratulations.
Was yesterday. Yes. So, so that's how we got into there. And we're really we would like to pick up another apartment complex at some point in Beaumont. Just not much on the market, just for economies of scale. And so right now we're really just focusing on our backyard to see if we can find some of these other hidden gems, and then bigger properties in Beaumont.
So you got an off-market property basically because you had gone down and looked at another property. You had met the property manager for that property, and now they knew what you were looking for, right? They knew that you didn't take that property because it had all those issues. They knew exactly what you wanted. And that property management, because you created that relationship, then brought you an off-market deal. That's an incredible story. And it's relationships, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Amazing.
Sure.
And so then this has been just this whole, like, you bought 2 of these properties. Is it total of 24 units is it 7 months? Yes. Is that what you've done? Is that the time frame?
Yeah, starting in February, pretty much. Yeah.
Wow.
Now 24.
5 months.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So we really wanted people to hear your appraisal story.
Yeah. Because it sounded like this transaction went pretty smoothly, except for one thing, right?
Except for the appraisal. Yeah. So when the appraisal came back, let's see, the asking price was $896,000. And I think the appraisal came back, I think, at 800 or something like that, 890 or 795. I can't remember exactly what, but much lower. The seller was very indignant that they would appraise his property not as high as his asking price, but because of all the work that he put into it. And it was really, he had really put a lot of good work into it, replaced the roofs and siding and sidewalks and renovated half the units, had really just treated and done really good quality work and just really treated it well. And things were just really heating up around there too. And already seeing some of the other properties that they had used for comps and knowing the condition of those properties. And I also think they undervalued the potential rent, because the rent, there's definitely room to move on the rent. So I figured I would see if I could actually challenge the appraisal, and did some research on how to actually challenge an appraisal and how to put together, and found a good article on Bigger Pockets on kind of how to do it, go through, just be very specific bullet points, don't write a novel, don't finger point, use actual data, ask questions. And so it took a lot of work of going through the appraisal, bit by bit, and looking at all their numbers, and then putting together my own numbers and data to, to challenge or just appeal their data. And then gave another comp for them to look at that had just sold for a lot more. And within 2 days of submitting it, got a revised appraisal back for a little over asking price.
Amazing. I remember part of the story was it was a beautiful day and you didn't really want to write the appraisal challenge. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it was a Saturday morning, so this is what weekends have been all about, right? It's like Saturday morning, it's a beautiful day outside, and the kids are out playing, and it was the last thing I wanted to do. I hate writing. I think it took like 4 hours to finally get it all done, and send it off, but it was worth it. Saved about $80,000. The loan was an 80% loan to value, so we would have had to put in 29% instead of 20% if we hadn't gotten the appraisal challenge one.
Amazing. Yeah. And we'll include the appraisal challenge. Kimberly has allowed us to share that with you guys. Yeah, definitely check that out. It's really, really well written, and it was very convincing. So great job on that.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you've now built your portfolio in 5 months, like we mentioned. What do you want to do with it long term? What's your bigger vision? And I think you said your husband is getting real estate professional this year too, right?
That's the goal. It's a lot of work for sure. And we're both putting in a lot of time, and he's putting in a lot of time. He's been driving to and from Kaiser a lot, and being general contractor. And I even went down and did some handy woman stuff one day. He's made a couple trips out to Beaumont, and he's thinking, he's like, next year, I think we should get full service property management for this Kaiser property. Because we need, to get reps, we really needed to mostly manage it ourselves this first year. And I think it also just helps to learn a lot. I'm sure we could probably get it running better a lot faster with the full service property manager, but at the same time, doing it on our own. I mean, we're using Hemlane, and we're using their full service, so we have their help with maintenance, coordination and stuff. And then we have a leasing agent helping us, but we're still having to do a lot of the work and oversee a lot of that stuff. And just the learning process, it's going to make us a lot better at managing the property manager when we do get a full service. And also, I mean, you guys taught us well about what questions to ask a property manager. I think along with that, having managed it yourself for a while also makes you even more like, this is what I need from you guys, and how do you manage this specific stuff. So it's been, right now, even though I want to go out and buy something else, and I'm always still looking, we really just need to get our feet underneath us on the Kaiser property, and because there's just a lot of stuff to do there to get that humming along nicely. It's way under rent, so there's things that we can do to really push things along there. And then setting up our weekly meetings, with our property managers in Beaumont, and getting a handle on that. But our goal really is to get I would like to, over the next few years, 25 doors a year. Ideally in 5 to 8 years, these doors producing $200 each a door at minimum. With the big goal right now is when I get to take my sabbatical in about 8 years, that we have enough passive income coming in to cover all living expenses, so we can go do whatever we want on my sabbatical. And then, to have enough income, ideally, it'd be great to have enough passive income to replace our current income when we do decide to dial it back. But I love what I do for work. I have no intentions of going part-time or retiring early. Although, I used to think I'd work till 65, and now I'm thinking, well, 58 or 60, just because it's tiring. I get the taking call and everything, like just physically, I get tired a lot easier. It takes me a lot longer to recover these days. But yeah, we both love what we do, and so no plans to go, just take off and travel around the world for a year or anything like that at this point yet.
And any closing advice for anyone else out there considering real estate and having watched your story, being super inspired?
I would say read, listen, learn, but also then take action and don't get stuck in the reading and learning phase. I did a ton of learning before we finally, made the plunge. Not that, but there's still so much learning that happened after that. And I think there's some things that you're just not going to learn until you actually get in there and start doing it. But having a good, at least, base of knowledge so that you know how to talk to brokers, how to talk to the bankers, what the difference between a commercial loan and a residential loan is, and how those processes work, et cetera, just makes it easier. And then when you keep learning, you learn what you don't learn and don't know yet. And so you kind of keep going down the rabbit hole. But I think having a partner, somebody who's psyched about it to go along with you makes it easier. Having someone more experienced or having a group to bounce ideas off of and to give you advice, whether it's a dedicated mentor or friends or a group like semi-retired Empire Builders or just something like that, I think really adds fuel to the fire. And keep looking. I mean, I think we had kind of given up on really getting anything in the Portland area. We had actually originally looked at this 20 unit in Oregon City, which is a suburb just southeast of Portland. But it was after when we ran the numbers, because basically on 100% financing, which is what we were doing, it didn't make sense. The numbers didn't pan out, and it was just way too much money. So that's when we really started looking out of state. But if I hadn't have kept looking around and kind of thought about looking at other things around our area, I wouldn't have found that 2 fourplexes in Kaiser.
Great advice. Thank you so much for your time, Kimberly.
Yeah.